I want to welcome everybody here to PNC Place. I always thought this was a politics town, right? Clearly, we love football. Just based on the number of people that we have here in the room, and clearly, you made a great investment. It looks like.
Thank you.
Yeah. But before we get started, I do want to thank Leadership Greater Washington. This is our last series of Lessons in Leadership. We've had a great year and all the targets that we've had this year, and I couldn't be more excited than the target that we have for today with Josh Harris, who is the owner of the Communicators. So welcome, Josh.
Great to be here. Great to be back in DC.
So I thought I would start off with, I just met your son. I thought I would start off with, I love sports. I played 3 sports growing up: football, basketball, and baseball. Started in sports when I was 6 years old. I'm curious, your love of sports, if you played sports growing up, if you did, what was your best sport?
Okay, so I grew up in Chevy Chase, Maryland. Great to see our fearless leader for many years introducing the Montgomery County. I grew up playing all kinds of sports, and actually for me, I played a lot of hoop, I played a lot of football, but quickly everyone got bigger and I stayed the same size. So I ended up as a high school soccer player and ultimately a high school and college wrestler. And sports kind of changed my life in terms of I was one of those kids that was not doing very well at school. I was very focused on athletics and other things, and wrestling was the kind of thing that you would literally go out and face off against another human being, and it was just one-on-one on the mat. Plus it was a team, and there's nothing like being physically dominated to sharpen your mind about preparing and running and lifting. And so I found when I would work out, when I would lift and run and get ready and practice and spend hours a day, I would excel. And so that was a good life lesson, and I was very competitive. And once I started doing well in wrestling, I applied that to high school in 11th and 12th grade. I hadn't done so well until then. And so my grades came up, and then I somehow got myself into the University of Pennsylvania, which is a Ivy League school, and wrestled there. So I think that for me, sports changed my life. And then obviously, just one more part of the story, and then I'll stop. It was an interesting 1982, right, is when I was a freshman in college, but that happened to be the year that the Washington football team and won the Super Bowl. So I was here for that ticker tape parade, and then I went up to Penn, and the Philadelphia 76ers won the NBA title. So I kind of got to see two parades and 2 world championships, and it was really a life-changing event because I saw like these cities, which were very diverse, very at that point racially charged, come out and really unite around these teams. And so it obviously in the back of my head did something, because I ended up owning those 2 teams. But I think that for a lot of reasons, sports has been very, very good to me, and it's like made me really want to devote my life to this.
So, Montgomery County kid, I've heard you say multiple times that you weren't doing well in school. I find that hard to believe, given that you were a scholar, both at the University of Pennsylvania and then to go on to Harvard Business School.
Yeah.
But before you got to that point, you were in Montgomery County Public School, and then you went to the field school.
Right.
What did the field school mean for you? I think 368 kids you graduated with. I graduated 114 kids in my class.
Yeah.
And so there must have been something about the setup of the school, maybe a little bit smaller setting. Like, how did that vault you to becoming a scholar versus the bad grades you said you were getting before?
Yeah. So what happened? First of all, I played MSI soccer my whole life growing up, and including with Mark Guine, who now owns we're on the same the Chevy Chase Chargers. So there you go. But I think that what happened was that, like I said, I was in public schools. I was in a feeder school to BCC called Leland Junior High School, and I'd been at Rollingwood Elementary before that, and it wasn't going very well, and I wasn't really applying myself. So my parents were smart enough to say to me, "Look, you're out. Like, you're not doing well, and you have three choices. You got this military school." You went to meet Mr. Bullis, who was very tough, and then there was a school called Field School, which was a very small school at that point. Actually, I only graduated with 31 kids, and at that point the school was 150 kids. It's gotten bigger now, but it was on Wyoming Avenue in Connecticut, and it was in a couple houses, right? So it was a little bit more of a open school, but you got the classes were really small, and it sort of took kids that they saw potential and that weren't doing as well, and it kind of focused. It gave some individualized attention and so forth, and so it ended up for me personally being a watershed moment. So I started there in 10th grade and ended up kind of thriving academically over time. And obviously when I got to Penn, I was all in on, I'm a competitive person. I was all in on winning. So, I started to really excel at school in that environment. And so that sort of transition for me was critical. And so that's kind of how it happened. And I don't know why, people I've never been someone that, I personally think that grit and tenacity, focus, hard work, I think all those things for me, I was never the tallest or the biggest, but I was very scrappy and fought, right? And left it all out on the mat or on the field or in school. And so that sort of ultimate transition into an Ivy League institution, it happened, through a lot of hard work and a lot of stress, to be quite frank. So, I think anything today, right, we live in everything is hard, right? There's a lot of competition everywhere, and unfortunately, there's no easy way to win. And so it's a lot of small decisions that over time add up to success.
So 118 pounds? That's what you wrestled at?
I wrestled at 118 pounds in college, and I weigh 162 pounds now, and it's pretty scary. I had cousins and family in Philly, and my uncle called my mother and said, you got to come up and get Josh. He's about to die. And I was like, I had lost, I think I went to Penn, I was weighed 140 something, and then they slotted me in at 118. And so, it probably wasn't the health, to be honest with you. Looking back on it, it wasn't the healthiest thing. I would sit in a sauna, and what would happen is you would train all week, and then you would make weight, right? And then you would eat, but you couldn't really eat that much because your stomach had gotten smaller. And then you would wrestle, and then you would Saturday night was the one night you would go out, and then you would come. I came in on Monday, it'd be 130. And I'd spend all week getting back down to 118. And they gave you a couple of pounds, and this is 120. But in retrospect, that probably wasn't a smart thing to do. I'm very into health and fitness now, and I do my best to be healthy. And I'm not sure that was such a good idea, but I was 118 pounds, and it was not a good thing.
Okay. And did you wrestle all the way through college?
I ended up getting to the point where I gave it up in the last couple years because it was just too hard to do everything all at once and be successful. And so, especially with the dieting, and so I the first couple of years I did, and then I didn't. And it was we would wrestle against schools like Army and Navy and Lehigh and Penn State, and they were all in. They were less on focus on the academics and more on winning, right? And so I remember actually I wrestled Bobby Weaver, was Olympic gold medalist from Lehigh, and I remember going down to Lehigh and being like scared, literally. And so but we it was one of those things where I personally had to choose, right, as to whether I was going to be successful in school and or successful in sports. I didn't want to like be unsuccessful in both. So I chose, the academics, and but it really was for me personally a super important experience, and a lot of, I think, the person that I've become has been, applying those lessons of like, being all in, every day at practice and making yourself better to life.
Yes, so similar experience for me. So I walked on to the football team in college, but much like you, I had to make a choice. I wasn't going to become a professional football player, which I found out very quickly. And I also had to choose. I became an accounting major actually when I decided to take a different route. And for you, what did you decide ultimately once you stepped away from wrestling and you decided you were going to pursue more academics? What did you pursue?
Yeah, so I had my grandfather was a U.S. postal worker from Philly, and he hadn't gone to college. My father went to Penn, and he was the first in his lineage to go to college. We had been, go back to another generation, we've been immigrants from Eastern Europe, so escaping religious persecution, and got probably like many of us, or like some of us, come through Ellis Island. So there's like a little plaque there that I've found. But my mom went to Temple University, and she got a 2-year degree and taught typing in the Philly high school. So I had never heard of business or finance or Wharton. But my dad had gone to Penn, so it was an aspirational school for me because I hadn't done that well. And so everything had to go right for me to get into Penn. It was an Ivy League institution. And somehow I got in, probably partially because they wanted me on the wrestling team. And ultimately, it turns out Penn is attached to this school called Wharton, which is business, obviously I think the best business school, undergraduate business school today.
Yeah, so right, we got some Warren grads in the crowd here. Looks like, yeah.
So I'd never heard of it. I literally just took an Econ 1A class. I liked economics, and next thing I know, and it turns out I found out later because I lived in New York City. And I guess if you're from the world of finance, right, like you start at 2 and you're supposed to get into Wharton, but I had never heard of it. And so you can it's harder to get in than Penn, so you kind of get in Penn and you transfer. But I never knew that, but
you must have had a lot of luck somehow. So I can see.
I think I honestly, I do think that like I'm a religious person, and I think about my life, and it's really hard to explain the whole thing, to be honest with you. And I agree that luck is really, or God has smiled on me. But I would say, so I signed a piece of paper, and next thing I transferred into Wharton, and at Wharton, the most exciting thing is Wall Street and finance. And my parents said, look, you should be an accountant. That's safer. This Wall Street thing, don't do that. It seems risky. But I was having none of it. So I ended up working, going from 4 years at Wharton to an investment bank called Drexel Burnham, Lambert, which at that point was dominating the leveraged finance markets and the LBO markets, and but then ultimately didn't make it. But that was my trajectory into the world of finance. It was, again, a lot of these things for me have happened by by luck or by just intuition, and then try. And I've always, for me, the transition into Wharton and then the transition onto Wall Street was very much of like, okay, aspirationally, and going to Penn was always like shoot really high, and then if you miss, you're way better off. And so I would always shoot super high and try to throw myself into the highest pressure, most competitive situation and see if I could succeed and thrive. And I just kept making it through. And so in the case of business, that was at that point Wall Street and finance, and so that's ultimately how I got onto Wall Street.
So I clearly took the safe route. I did the accounting, finance, landed in the commercial bank. Investment banking was what you pursued.
Right.
Talk to us a little bit about why. I think you were doing M&A type finance when you were at Drexel.
Yeah, so in that same vein, I mean, at that point, it was 1986, and it was the creation of the high yield market, and there were a lot of, LBO finance takeovers of companies, and it was a very exciting place to be. And M&A was, most of what Drexel did, and so we were in the middle of, some of the biggest takeovers in history at that point, and it was an incredible, and so it was attracting the best and the brightest people, and I think as we start to talk about organizations, that becomes the key to it. So they're all the smartest people coming out of the best schools, and all the people from Wall Street wanted to work at Drexel. It was a very entrepreneurial place at that time, and so I was an analyst, literally. So what you would do as an analyst was you would literally sit there and model out the financial structures of all these takeovers and companies and their financial results, and it was like a boot camp for finance. So I was working like 100 hours a week, working from day and night. I was 21, and I just threw myself into it and learned as much as I could. And I was with a lot of other young people, and we would sort of just do what they threw at us. And so it was a hard experience to go through, but once you get through it, right, you're incredibly well trained in the nuts and bolts of finance, and how to put deals together, and how much debt a company should take on, for example, because debt can work both ways, but if you're smart about it, it can be very helpful. And how much equity, and what is a good company, what is a bad company. And so that was how I spent my first 2 years on Wall Street. And at the end of it, I was sort of like, I was promoted to associate, and again, just luckily, because Drexel ended up not making it through the recession, I applied to one business school. I sort of Wharton had been enough in terms of like the nuts and bolts of business, but Harvard Business School was obviously what it was, and it was also the case study method. It was much less about finance and more about companies, and I threw in an application, and I said, like, if I get into Harvard, I'll go. I don't know if I'll get in, and I got in, so I ended up leaving before the Drexel didn't make it, and so I ended up going to business school.
So it wouldn't be worth my weight if I didn't ask some banking questions, but
go for it.
Yeah, well, I want to be a little careful because we do more debt than equity.
Okay.
Where we sit here, but so while at Harvard Business School, you met your wife, Marjorie.
Yeah. No, after. I met her at Apollo.
So you met her in Apollo.
Yeah, I met her in '95.
That must have been a misread.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I was at Harvard Business School '88 to '90, and it was an amazing experience. I mean, today, many times, my classmates include the CEO of GE, CEO of a lot of major companies, right? And they just
Jack Walsh or Jeff Immelt or
no, it's the Larry Culp.
Larry Culp.
Larry Culp was in my class.
All right.
But I had a ton of Jonathan Kraft.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to date you too much. Jack Walsh has been waiting for you to tell me.
Yeah.
So I apologize.
He's old. Jonathan Kraft was in my class. You had just a number of well-known business leaders. At that point, right, they were just people and kids, and so you got to know all these incredible people. And it was after Drexel and working 100 hours a week, it was actually it was a little bit easier, to be honest with you. They have they teach competitive strategy, so the Michael Porter 5 Forces framework, and it's a way of taking a step back and deciding what you like, what you want to do. It's very much about management, people, culture, and so you meet a lot of people, and I think it lasts with you your whole life. So I thought it was an amazing experience, and it ended up obviously I ended up going back into finance, right? And never forget, I took a job at Blackstone, which at that point, I mean, if we're getting into alternatives, I mean, it was a 5-year-old firm, and it was not, and Blackstone today is the largest alternatives firm. It manages $1 trillion of assets. But at that point, it was a 5-year-old firm, and the people that I had been sitting side by side with at Drexel, I was out working for them, and I remember thinking, this doesn't seem right. Like I went to Harvard Business School, and now I'm working for this guy that used to be my colleague, but it's a long race. So, it ended up okay.
Well, you clearly changed that story. So 1990, you're out of Harvard Business School, you're working at Blackstone. How old are you at that time?
Yeah, so I was at Drexel 21 to 23, and then I was at Harvard 23 to 25. I was 25. So I was 25 years old, and I went to work at Blackstone, and a couple people that I had worked for at Drexel, so Leanne Black and Mark Rowan. Drexel had gone bankrupt. It hadn't made it through the financial crisis that existed in 1990, and they called me and said, "Will you come will you come help us start Apollo?" And at that point, right, I had a Harvard education, Wharton education. I had a great job at Blackstone, which ended up being an amazing firm. And I thought about the opportunities that I had, and ended up, kind of choosing to take a risk and start Apollo with people that I knew. And so a lot of times when I'm speaking to audiences or kids, especially kids, because today entrepreneurism is, people talk about it and want to do it, and there's a lot of success stories. I always talk about, looking at your life and yourself as an investment, almost like, what's the risk return? Like, is this a good idea for me or not? And I concluded it was. I took my shot, and it ended up being, obviously, an amazing thing for me. I founded Apollo, but at that time it was not as clear, that it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, at 25 years old, you had to have something that I know you weren't happy to work with the folks you were working with at Blackstone. There had to be something else that really drove you to take that level of risk at that age, and for the amount of capital that you raised in order for you to run Apollo.
Yeah, so I mean, sort of what Apollo did is it innovated in the financial crisis. So at that point, I mean, I'm probably older than most people in the room, but that was the savings and loan crisis in 1990, and the entire savings and loan industry, and a bunch of the insurance industry, the buyers of high yield securities and debt securities were in trouble and going bankrupt. The government was taking them over, and Apollo, their strategy was, we had worked at Drexel, and so I had very deep knowledge of these companies, and there were a lot of great companies that were over leveraged, that had bad balance sheets, that couldn't refinance because the high yield market was stopped. And so it's like when you have a mortgage on a house, and the bank doesn't want to lend you another mortgage when the mortgage matures. And so we went into the market and bought a lot of debt securities. And instead of doing leverage buyouts or private equity instead of buying houses the normal way where you would put a mortgage on a house and borrow from a bank, we bought the mortgage and then got rid of it and ended up owning the equity that way. So it was called, we would buy great companies like RJR, Turner Broadcasting, Culligan Water Systems, Samsonite Luggage, Lane and Broyhill Furniture, Vail Resorts. All those companies were great companies, but they had too much debt based on the fact they couldn't refinance. And so we were approaching the world in a way that was different than others, right? So A, was innovative. And then B, it was a different culture. Blackstone had been was run by people that had come out of the government, Pete Peterson, Steve Schwarzman. And, I was hired as an associate. I was, going back, I was back to the grind in terms of like, just go do the model and like, I'll see you tomorrow morning kind of thing. And at Apollo, right, we took a different approach where the younger people, because it was a small organization, were part of the leadership team. And so it really had an indelible, kind of experience. It really had something in my brain click where you give young people more responsibility and allow them, put controls, right? But then allow them to thrive and throw their energy into, building a company. And so that was the way we approached it in that way. So it was a much flatter organization. We were innovating. And then when I joined, we had already circled a bunch of money. So I knew that in the private equity industry, you get a management fee that is paid, that turns on a light, pays the bill. So I knew that I was not gonna, the thing wasn't gonna fail financially, right? And so for all those reasons, and then lastly, I just knew the people, right? I had worked with them, and so for all those reasons, I decided to leave Blackstone. Even though, now obviously, if I had stayed at Blackstone, that's ended up being an amazing firm. So I really couldn't make a bad choice, but I didn't. And then obviously, private equity has become this like massive industry. At the time that I did it, it was a really small industry, right? There were very few firms, and so we were at the beginning of a really good trajectory. We were innovating. I was with great people, and I knew that I was financially secure because of the management fees. So I thought about it a lot, and that's why I did it.
So I promise you we're going to get to the sports part of this conversation. You're probably all out there maybe yawning a little bit if we got the ass stop. But I'm actually loving this conversation. So I want to stay on the private equity piece just for a minute, because to your point, private equity.
This is the most I've talked about alternatives since I've come to Washington. I feel like I'm in New York. But
private equity has become this huge alternative value class. I mean, it's a differentiated way to create value. For the longest time, the only way that an owner, well, not the only way, but one of the ways that an owner can maximize his value is by taking the company public.
Right.
And private equity it's supplanted that. It continues to grow. I mean, why do you think it's such a great, kind of value asset class? How did you benefit from it? And where do you think it stands today?
Yeah, so the reason that private securities really ultimately have outperformed public securities, right? So what's happened in the markets is that the big pension systems, sovereign wealth funds, money managers, the massive movers of capital around the world, they tend to have large pools of capital, and some of them need to be liquid, right? So if you're a pension fund, you need to buy public equities and public debt because you need to be able to sell something right away and get your money. But what people have found is that when they're with the right managers, private assets produce greater returns. And this whole debate about it, and so particularly in the case of private equity, the average private equity investment has outperformed the public markets by about 400 basis points. And then the good firms, the firms like Apollo and Blackstone, have outperformed the public markets by almost 1,000 basis points, so much higher. And so what's happened is,
for those of you who are non-bankers, that's 4% versus 10%. Just want to make sure you break that down, because he's talking real speed here.
Sorry about that.
It's all right.
And so money has just flowed into these private firms, and there's now a school of thought, right, which is that the big firms are getting too big, and that they have too much money, and they can no longer generate. There's big pushback from the investors now. I have my own firm, which called 2600, which I've started post Apollo, and we're an alternative to the big firms. Our sort of pitch is, look, it's my capital. We're going to keep the capital small. We're going to go back to creating alpha, to outperformance. And so I was with a state pension fund actually yesterday, and they said, look, we want to bring down our allocation to the big firms because we no longer think they're agile enough to succeed in, and they have too much of our capital. So we're in a little way disrupting, some of the big firms, and, we're working with these same institutions to manage capital for them. So I think so that's kind of what's going on in the industry. And I think that, listen, it's hard to generate alpha over $1 trillion. That's just the reality of it. So I think that there is some truth to the fact that that too much capital is flowed in some sense, but that's in essence why private markets have gotten so much capital, and that's why they're developing into almost a pseudo public market. There's 30,000 or something private companies, and there's 4 or 5. It's way less. I think it's something like 4 or 5. I'm like throwing numbers off the top of my head, and these are orders of magnitude. There's 3,000 or 4,000 public companies, and so there's way more opportunities. And so, and then also there's another school of thought also, which is that the public markets aren't as liquid as you think. So when in some cases during the financial crisis, when people really want to sell, there's not a lot of liquidity in the market. So I mean, this probably doesn't matter, as an individual person, right? But for a big institution, when they want to move a lot of securities, and they think the public market's the bid that is there, and then all of a sudden they try to sell a little bit more than a small amount, and it goes down. So for all those reasons, people have gotten more comfortable putting more and more of their assets into private securities. And now from state pension funds, when I started, it was less than 5% of their assets. Now it's probably, U.S. pension system is probably 20+% of their assets are in private securities. And so it's a big growth area. And Apollo and Blackstone are obviously they're 2 of the 3 biggest firms.
So at some point, you began to have an interest in investing in sports teams. Starting with the Sixers, then with the New Jersey Devils, now with the Commanders, Crystal Palace. Then you also have an investment in Joe Gibbs Racing.
I did.
What was your interest in sports, and what was the opportunity you saw in making those investments?
Yeah, so like a lot of my life, it's been, it was just one of those things that happened in terms of I had achieved, Apollo went public, and so all of a sudden I had achieved, way more financial success than I ever dreamed possible. And I heard that, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Comcast, the cable company, owned the Sixers and the Flyers, and they owned the arena in Philly and a whole lot of other arenas. And they were a cable system. They had a lot of, they had gotten into it for the cable rights. And so I heard that the fellow that they had partnered with, he had started the Flyers and he loved hockey, but shockingly, because I'm not like this, he wasn't that interested in basketball. And so I had, I'd gone to Penn, and my mom had grown up in Philly, and my grandmother was there, and my grandfather, and a lot of my family. And I just called them and utilized my, what I had learned at Apollo, which is how to, buy things. And at that point, the Sixers had lost connectivity to the city of Philly. They, since the Iverson years, which was a decade before, they hadn't really made the playoffs, and the arena was empty, and they were losing a lot of money every year. And the NBA itself it was just post the financial crisis, it was 2010, and the NBA was in a lockout. And so it was as an investment, it was a scary thing for me in terms of, but I felt like if we restored the Sixers in terms of the franchise and the culture, and reconnected with the city, that I saw kind of like a sleeping giant. And so I ended up 18 months later, we did what's called a corporate carve out. We took it out of Comcast, and we still play in their arena. We're trying to build a new arena. And we still are hooked up to their cable system, but we took it out of Comcast. It's very complicated, and I formed a group of people that had gone to Penn and myself, basically, and we bought it, and it was losing like a lot of money every year. But then we changed it. We changed, ultimately it's a long story, but we we went from we reconnect. We did a lot of the things that we're doing here in Washington, which is we started to engage with the city in a really positive way, change the culture. Ultimately, started to win, basketball game. We've won, 50 plus games. We're the second most winning team over the last 5 years. We have not won the NBA championship, which is super frustrating. But I think that, we're an elite team in the NBA. And we have, we went from, 27th in revenue out of 30 to 5th. And so what I find is that, if you invest in the team, if you make the city proud of the team, if you win, it's cities that respond. And so we've invested in the team. We built a new practice facility. We're trying to build an arena.
Each one of those cities are different. I mean, so New Jersey, Philly.
They're very different.
DC. So why DC? Why football? They're even different sports. So, what was your interest in the NFL? What was your interest in Washington, DC?
So the story. My story in sports is, to a certain extent, like obviously in my head from growing up, I had I love basketball. I played hoop, in the neighborhood at Candy Cane City with the metal nets, and I was never gonna play basketball, but I really enjoyed it, I think that then I witnessed, I had grown up with the Washington Bullets. Elvin Hayes and Bobby Dandridge and like Phil Chenier and like Wes Unseld, and I witnessed all that. Oscar Robertson. So I was here for all that. I was here in 1975. My dad and my brother and I went to the Capitol Center for opening day, so all this stuff was in my head. Obviously, then I witnessed the Sixers win the title. And I did at that point really think about. I said, look, it's either. I did talk to Ted about it, honestly. So it was going to be one of those two things, and I ended up, getting involved with Sixers. But what happened was that it was amazing, right? Like, first of all, it ended up somehow being a good investment. An outstanding investment, but it's not why I had done it. But also, it was amazing to be around these athletes that were at the best in the world at something that they did. They're all really unique people. And when you guys see the athletes, right, everyone says, well, they make a lot of money and they should be playing hard and all this. But like, they really, I can tell you, just being around these athletes, I was just with Jaden Daniels. I spent time with Joel Embiid or Tyrese Maxey. They're amazing people. And then I enjoy, I really enjoyed the platform that sports gave me to make the world a better place in terms of impacting the cities in a positive way. And in Philly, and all these cities, across all these cities, like we engage with the cities and help, people that are less fortunate, and use sports as a power to lift communities. And so, in terms of the Philly, so once I did Philly, I did it with a partner called David Blitzer, who I had known. We had been at Penn, and then he was at Blackstone, and we ended up, then getting involved with Newark. But he really takes care of that sport. There's only so much life force. I sort of feel like in sports, like if I take something on, like my job is to win for the city and to set a great example and really draw people into being part of it, and fix the customer experience, and and then help people, right? So it's like win, create memories, and that's hard. It's a lot of work, right? So you can't really do it in London. We're in South London, in a tough area. We're not if you go to London, you got to drive an hour to where we are, and it's called Croydon, Crystal Palace. It's like an area where a lot of the immigrants from Africa enter the United Kingdom, and it's super cool. I mean, it's like a small community. They love our team, but I have a partner that runs it. I go to two games.
But you had to be super, super excited about Washington D.C. I mean, you spent $6 billion.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's
That's a story in sports. But then, like for me, obviously, like I grew up here, so I had decided that I was kind of done, and I was starting this new business, and you know, look, obviously the team was experiencing a really difficult situation, and my friend Mark Guyon called me and he said, we gotta try to get involved here. And I was like, you know, Jeff Bezos is gonna own this team. I can't. I had just decided, you know, that I was gonna focus on building 26 North, which is my new investment platform, and everything else that I had going on in my life that was all positive. And just I was at like my ability to do things effectively was, but it was like one of those things where someone needed to do it, right? Because it was such an important. I grew up here during the you know, Washington football run, right? I grew up with Billy Kelmer, Sonny Jurgensen. Some of my earliest memories. I remember walking to RFK Stadium and being 8 years old, and my dad saying, you know, that's, you know, Jack can't cook, and like, you know, and hearing everyone walking down East Capitol Street, and you know, all of it, right? And then being here for the Joe Gibbs years, and drafting Art Monk, and drafting Darryl Green, and then, you know, the Hogs and John Riggins breaking that tackle and winning 27-17. I actually remember I think my earliest memory, honestly, is Garrow, you're blocking, Mike Bass blocking, or one, I don't know if he ran the thing back or he blocked it, but when the then Redskins won lost 14-7 to the Miami Dolphins in the 1973, you know, kind of Super Bowl, and I think I must have been, because I was 8 years old. So I'm just saying that I felt a great connection to the city and to the team itself. And when I have an investment team that does this with me, and we looked at a lot of sports outs over the years, but when I first went to then FedEx Field, you know, and you see all the people's names and uniforms, and like they were like, you know, I was like taking pictures, and they're like, no, they're like, this is different. You're a little emotional about this. So for me, this is emotional, and so after a lot of thought and trying to figure out both financially and just life force wise whether I could take this on, because when I take this on for a city, and especially the city that I'm from, and for you all, you know, I think I'm a steward for this city to restore this team to greatness, which is a lot about, you know, obviously how everyone feels about it, but also it's about winning. It's really hard to win in sports, right? So I think that, you know, it takes a lot of life force, right, to do it. So, you know, what ended up happening, obviously, is I threw my value credentials out the window. I paid the highest price ever in the world, ever in the history of the world, for sports team.
Well, we're happy that you made the investment. We're super excited to have you as a new owner here in town. I think you're going to make a huge difference. I noticed that Jason Wright is here, the head of football operations for the Commanders. I believe Jason is the only African American to hold that post across the NFL. I also noticed that you have partnered with folks like Magic Johnson and Serena Williams as a part of your investment teams, and I'm just curious what that diversity might bring, not only for the Commanders, for all your other investors that you've made in the past.
Yeah, so like whether it be Jason or Magic Johnson, I mean, you know, he or Serena, right? These are incredible people, and you know, people ask me that now. It's like, who wouldn't want to partner with Irvin Magic Johnson, right? The guy's won multiple NBA championships, multiple championships in other sports. He's an amazing guy in business, and yeah, I think that obviously having people that have different perspectives, from different backgrounds, that have come from different places, I think is a massive added bonus. But in all those cases, like, I'm lucky. I really enjoy them as partners and as people, and then Yes, like also like that, the fact that they also are an example for a community and everything else, that's like an added bonus. But I think that if you open your mind, a lot of you can get a lot of benefit from being around great people, wherever they come from.
Yeah, you say you like to win. Those are definitely winners. All three.
Right, and you got to be around winner.
All right. Well, we have some questions from the crowd. We put some index cards, I believe, on your chairs. I hope I can represent the questions that you really wanted to ask Josh while he was here in the hot seat. So one of the questions that we had here is, what's the reputation that you want DC's team to have for the next 5 years?
Yeah, so I would say that the DC is a super important city, and everyone in the world watches it, right? And I think that sports is a unifying force, right? Like when you're watching the Commanders, right? It doesn't matter whether you're black or white, Republican or Democrat. Whatever your religion is, you're part of a community that is cheering for a sports team. And so I think first and foremost, I want to unite the city behind the Commanders, and give people something good in their lives to experience and to root for. And because I grew up with that, right? That's the way it was. I mean, Washington football, respectfully to the Capitals and to then the Wizards, like no one really, I mean, everyone cared about Washington football. It was so dominant, and the NFL is dominant. And so and like in order to do that, obviously we do need to win. I mean, at the end of the day, I think people are going to give us the benefit of the doubt. And sometimes it takes a while. It took me a while to, get the Sixers going that way, but that's going to take some patience and some long run decision making. And the immediate gratification thing generally doesn't work. I mean, firing the coach, when things don't go well, that's an easy thing to do, but you really got to think about who's the next coach and are they better, right? Or, bringing in, a superstar at the end of his career, that's not always the right answer, right? And so, I think I think that's what I would say. That's how I'd answer the question.
All right. So like it or not, the reputation and culture, I think, of any team, especially in the NFL, starts with the quarterback. And
Yep.
Respectfully, I'm a Ravens fan. So Lamar Jackson, I'm sorry, I had to say it. If my kids were here, they would shoot me down if I didn't make it. So I had to put that out there. That's okay. Come on. But Jaden Daniels is your guy.
Yep.
Why is he your guy? Both, I think, reputationally for who you want to be as the Commanders, and then ultimately on the field and performing.
Yeah, so look, I mean, obviously we brought in a new GM and a new coach, and a whole new front office and coaching staff. And I think that, sports teams, I think you win off the field and then you start winning on the field. So it all starts with leadership and culture, and treating people right, and accountability and excellence. And so, we lived through a difficult season last year, but we one of the things that happened was we got the number 2 pick. And I think the number 2 pick was way better than the number 3 pick in this draft, to be honest with you. And I think Jaden was an easy pick, both in terms of his stats, in terms of what he does on the field, his arm, his ability to get out of, to his ability to run, and his athleticism, but also more and more as we spend time with him, he's a tireless worker and a very understated leader, but a leader. So I think that, listen, we have super high hopes for Jaden. And the way that Dan and Adam are doing this is they're going to let him compete, and we'll see what happens. But I think that we're very excited.
So I know you haven't selected where the team might ultimately reside long term,
Mm-hmm.
but talk to us a little bit about what your commitment to our community means for the greater community, and what are you doing to try to regain the trust and the support of the region?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, when we got here, there was, there were a lot of issues, and there'd been underinvestment in facilities. So, like, what we've done is really three different things all at once. One is we've tried to, change the culture of the team and, what it stands for in terms of, in essence, being righteous, in terms of, how we treat people, both inside the team, but also our fans. And so like I said, I look at, my commitment here as it's not really my team, it's your team. And so, and so it starts with, what we say is that it starts with, it's like, sport teams are interesting things because obviously the players are ultimately going to decide how we do on the field. But let's say you go to our stadium and, the parking attendant isn't nice to you, or the food isn't good, or the person punching your ticket isn't nice. Like, you're going to have a bad experience, right? So it's like everyone has to be accountable to the fans and the public and the customers, and then the press are everywhere. The slightest, the slightest thing that you do is, scrutinized like crazy. So while you're doing all this and holding people accountable, you have to also be very careful how you treat them. And so, like, we're trying to change the culture person by person, and we're giving people the opportunity to succeed. Jason's giving the people the opportunity to succeed, and not everyone will succeed, but like, that's how we do it. We sort of say, look, this is what we're going to stand for. We want you here, and but you guys decide, right? Like, and so it takes a little while to get through that, and so we're doing all that and making a lot of new hires, new capabilities. So that's kind of one thing. The second thing is, obviously, we're putting a lot of money into the stadium, and so we announced an $80 million program across the stadium and also across the where the athletes are in Virginia, which was really kind of not what you would like. If you went to our training ground, right, you wouldn't see what you would expect in terms of the facilities for the players, the showers. And so we're just upgrading a lot of different things there, as well as upgrading things all over the stadium. We saw leaks. Literally after a game, the showers didn't work. There was no hot water, and the 49ers were complaining. Stuff, or the food service wasn't as good because the ovens were old, and then it's just more stuff like changing premium and redoing the look of things. And so Jason and his team are busily fixing everything as quickly as we can, while we look for a new home, which we could talk about. And then the last thing we're doing is we want to fix the football operations. And we last season we endured a difficult season. We won 4 games. That's not fun for anyone, least of all me. I didn't like it, but I think that we told Ron Rivera and the coaching staff and the front office that we would give them the season, and we did, and it didn't work. And so then we made some changes and brought in new leadership, and now and then that's led to, of the 90 players who were yesterday, we had our first, kind of combine with the vets and the new free agents and the new people that we had drafted, and 57 of the 90 players are new. 57 of 90. So I think that's a lot, but I think we've brought in, a lot of amazing free agents, people that have been winners, Bobby Wagner, Zach Ertz, and then we drafted really well, and they've drafted real culture. They've drafted for athleticism and culture. Like, they're
two great veterans.
yeah.
Yeah, I've had each of them on my fantasy team.
Nice.
Yeah, Wagner's a hell of a linebacker. I played linebacker in college, so
Nice.
he's a heck of a guy. Yeah.
He's a serious guy.
Yeah.
Wouldn't want to get hit. I was standing there watching it and almost got run over by a receiver, and Adam Peters like pushed me out of the way, and he's like, "Ow, guys!" These guys, stay out of their way. But I think that, whatever. I think that we're on a journey to fix football operations. I think we're going to make a lot of progress next year. And we're optimistic that we're going to compete and be better. And I just ask everyone to listen. People are super optimistic, but sometimes these things take time. So
a couple more questions. This is a little bit of an off the cuff question here coming from the crowd around. You talked about being a health guy. I would suspect you're also potentially a foodie. You really like food. Do you have a favorite restaurant in Washington, D.C.?
My favorite restaurant in Washington, D.C. is the steak place at the Four Seasons called Bourbon.
Steak. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I don't feel very good after I eat there.
That's a great location. All right, and this is going to be our final question for today, especially around leadership. The whole series that we have here is Lessons in Leadership. So what makes you a compelling leader? What is it about you that's driven you to get to where you are today? And what is that going to do to help the Commanders win more than 4 games this season?
So I think what my superpower is attracting amazing people, or to get sort of creating a mission, and then attracting an amazing team around me to execute that mission. So for me, I think that culture and people eat strategy for breakfast. In other words, I think that in a business like sports, right, it's just people, right? And so at the end of the day, it's about creating culture. It's about creating a mission. It's about attracting amazing people to get on that mission with you, and then holding them accountable and giving them the resources that they need. So I think Jason, keeping Jason, Dan Quinn, Adam Peters, we're on a mission to succeed for the city. And I think that if you make it about the city and not about yourself, so I think if you make things about yourself, you don't attract great people. So I think what I tend to do is make it, I've been incredibly blessed. My life is, I can't even explain some of the things that happened to me, and I want to pay it forward, and do what people did for me, right? Which is help people. And, one way obviously is, going to the community and, charity and, create job creation. That's one reason that I'm still in business. It's not about making more money. It's about that. And then sports. Like, sports really is an amazing thing. In today's world, right, there's so many bad things going on everywhere, and there's very few things like sports now. Live entertainment. Look at Taylor Swift. That's the biggest concert ever, right? Because people, like, the community is breaking down, right? So people want to be part of these communities, and then the platform that sports gives all of us, right, is it attracts kids. And then you can lure them in with sports, but then help them with life, right? And so, my whole thing is let's win, let's pull together, support this team, and create something better for the DMV. And then if I stay on that mission as a servant leader, I'll get great people around me, and eventually we'll pull it off.
Well, Josh, this has been a great talk. Thank you so much for your willingness to do this today. I want to thank Leadership Greater Washington as well.
Come on, one more round of applause for Josh. Come on, here we go.